Welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name's Mary English. You can find me at www.maryenglish.com, maryenglish.co.uk and UK Astrologer. Hello, how are you? Now, I don't want to start this week's podcast by saying this is a controversial subject, because that already then puts me on a negative footing. What I do want to talk about today is two different people's charts and the massive differences between them. And the subject is a thing called wild birthing. Now, I hadn't heard of anything called wild birthing or free birthing until I read an article in the Guardian newspaper, of which I will put a link in the show notes. And it's about two women called Emily Saldaya and another lady called Yolande Norris Clark, who are social media influencers that have a podcast and also a YouTube channel and an enormous presence on Instagram, and they, inverted commas, sell training courses to train you to do risky things. And what I found interesting about the article was it didn't mention at all a lady called Ina May Gaskin, who was, in inverted commas, a natural childbirther who used to live on a place called The Farm. I think it's in Tennessee in the US, but don't quote me. We'll talk about her in a bit more in a minute. And I thought, it's interesting, this article that these two women, so the two journalists at The Guardian, had written about the free birthing, wild birthing, whatever you want to call it. And I thought, that's the thing about this wild birthing / free birthing, is that you give birth to your baby with no one, that's like 0 people assisting you. So you give birth wherever, whichever place you choose or however you want to do it, but no one will assist you. And then if your baby dies, these advocates of it say, well, that's just life type of thing. And I can only equivalent it to something like extreme hiking. There's also a thing called, I don't know if you got it in the US, but here we've got a thing called wild camping, where you take yourself off somewhere and you camp in the middle of nowhere with no electricity, but they all seem to manage to have their mobile phones to film themselves doing whatever it is they're doing. And I just thought, what is this wild thing that people want? Well, why would you want to put yourself at acute risk? Because the thing you have to remember, while you're busily having a baby, you're so busy having the baby that you're not going to know what's going on with the baby. Depending. Now, plenty of people have given birth unassisted. I have an in-law relative who was on her way was rushing to hospital to give birth because her contractions were so acute. And this was her second baby. And when she got to the hospital, she thought, I just need to go for a wee. Well, she got into the toilet and gave birth in the toilet at the hospital. So there are plenty of people that have, inverted commas, had unassisted births, giving birth in their car, because in the case that I was talking about a few weeks ago, I was talking in episode 458 about a lady called Constance Martin who gave birth in her car and decided to live in a tent and then in a shed on an allotment in the middle of winter, and unfortunately her baby froze to death, was suffocated by her, but so it's disgusting though. So anyway, I read the article on The Guardian and I thought, well, if somebody started up this new, inverted commas, a new cult, a new fashion. There must be something going on in their chart to even want them to do that. And also, to give birth completely unaccompanied, you've got to be reasonably strong-minded. And yeah, so after a lot of searching, I found the birth details of one of the people that is involved in this free/wild birthing, and I'd like to compare her charts in this episode with Ina May Gaskin, who's only just still alive. She's in her she was born in 1940. So Ina May Gaskin is the author of a fabulous book which I've got a copy of, and it's called Spiritual Midwifery. And probably, like a lot of mothers, I myself wanted to have a natural birth, and I got myself a TENS machine, which gives you a little electronic whatevers to stop the contractions. And to tell you the truth, what I thought I wanted and what I got were two different things. I didn't stress about it, and I don't stress about it now, because I didn't know an awful lot about birthing other than what I'd read in this book, and it was very helpful because I ended up having a thing called polyhydramnios, where you have too much amniotic fluid and the baby's basically living in a swimming pool. And that's a side effect of having type 1 diabetes. So there was no chance that I would ever be able to have a natural home birth. It was my first baby, and in the UK you can't give birth at home with a first baby unless you're really bloody minded. And I took the advice that I was given because I hadn't ever given birth before, and there's a limit to the amount of things you can read in the hopes that you might have. But I say I wanted to have a natural birth. It didn't happen. I ended up having a cesarean a few hours after being admitted to the hospital because they tried to induce me, and the inducement didn't work, and then I had the baby and everything was fine. Yes. However, I'm not so, it's not necessarily strong-minded, bloody-minded, that I would insist on something and then go training lots of other people to do the thing that, because this first lady, Amelie Saldaya, hadn't ever given birth and rocked up with this Yolanda lady, who I think she's got 11 children now. But anyway, come on to their charts in a minute. So I want to talk about Ina May Gaskin just a teeny bit. There's a lot of information there about her. And all we're doing today is we're talking about the astrology. You can read up on both of these people, all three of them. There is no connection between Ina May Gaskin and Emily Saldaya. They have never met. I've double checked. They don't quote each other. They haven't read each other's books. They probably don't know about each other's existences, because nowadays it's quite easy to live in a little bubble and not come across other stuff. Anyway, Ina May Gaskin, who trained to be a midwife, started out as a right old hippie, travelling around with her husband, and he was a inverted commas spiritual leader, and they were knocking about in San Francisco, and she shacked up with him, and they went travelling in a caravan, and there was lots of them. And then eventually they settled somewhere, bought the land, and then created a place called the farm, which still exists. And her chart, she, because people that were on the farm were pregnant and having babies and stuff, she eventually trained and learned how to give birth. And on the farm itself, they pride themselves in the fact that they haven't had too many cesareans and not a lot of babies dying. She herself, her first baby died because the baby is some sort of shoulder condition where the baby's shoulder gets caught. Anyway, Ina May Gaskin, so she was born on Friday the 8th of March 1940. Don't know the time. She was born in Iowa City in the USA, making her a sun sign Pisces, moon sign Pisces, and Mercury retrograde in Pisces. So she's a pesky Pisces. She has a one-sided chart. She's got Jupiter, Saturn, Venus in Aries. She's got Mars and Uranus in Taurus. She's got her Chiron in Cancer. Is that retrograde? Yes. She's got Pluto 0 degrees retrograde into the sign of Leo, and it only forms one aspect. So the Pluto, because this is the important point I'm going to make in the podcast, Pluto is squaring Saturn and squaring Venus. Just out of sign, but mathematically. And she has Neptune retrograde in Virgo, and that's in a direct opposition to her Mercury retrograde and her Sun in Pisces. Okay, so I've followed Ina for quite a while since I read her book. So I would have read her book in the 1990s, and my sister had read the book, and my sister's births. So my sister gave birth 3 times. She's got 3 kids, never lost any kiddies as far as I'm aware. Her births were all pretty easy, and she was a right sort of, what's the word, earth goddess. So she was great at giving birth. I wasn't. But I did read the book, and it was very, very helpful, because in the book is, I think it's at the back of the book. Hold on now. At the back of the book is all the, complications of labour and all the things that could go wrong. Okay, and so that was really useful for me. It also talks about rhesus negative, and I'm rhesus negative myself. If I had given birth at home to a rhesus negative baby, and the baby hadn't had the injection they have to have at birth, then my baby might not have lived. Okay, but she talks about everything in there. So there's one thing, inverted commas, going for a natural birth and not being in hospital, and none of these ladies were on the farm in hospital because they were living on the farm, but they did know that if things got out of hand, they could call the doctor. There was a doctor that lived near them, and there was a hospital that wasn't too far away, so they could take people there if needed. So to my mind, her attitude towards, inverted commas, natural birth was practical and sensible enough, and the thinking behind it, wanting natural birth, not wanting to have drugs, etc., perfectly understandable and doable. And the book is a treasure, because in there is about polyhydramnios, and when I was pregnant, I couldn't find a thing on it. This is back in the day the internet wasn't a thing. I had to go to the library. I actually bought the book somewhere else, but it did have the information there about polyhydramnios, so I knew that if I was to give birth, naturally it would be a bit more on the dangerous side. So that's my story. Okay, now Ina May Gaskin is a sun and moon in Pisces, and the planet we want to look at when we're looking at parenting and our attitude towards being a parent is Saturn. Now, I have banged on about this before on the podcast, that if you're married to somebody and their Saturn is in a different sign to you, you might have a different attitude towards parenting your children, because Saturn is the planet of parenting. And Ina May Gaskin's got a stellium in Aries. She's got Jupiter, Saturn, Venus. So her Saturn is in between Jupiter and Venus. So she's got Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, all in Aries, and her Saturn is sandwiched between those 2 planets. So Saturn's a planet of responsibility. In the sign of Aries, I'm going to be responsible in a leadershipy type of way. I'm going to have to believe in what it is that, because that's Jupiter, I'm going to have to believe in my sense of responsibility, and there's love in that as well, because Venus is there as well. Now, I don't have birth times for either of these ladies. I'm using the whole sign system. So we do have Ina is a sun sign Pisces, so there's quite a lot of water in her chart. She's got 3 planets in water. She's got 3 planets in earth, and 4 planets in fire, and 0 planets in air. Now, we also have to recognise that if you've got no air in your chart at all, she has got North Node, so Ina May Gaskin's got a North Node in air, and it's in the sign of Libra, which is a nice balanced sign. That if there is no air in the chart, it's pointless with the person to try and do the rational thing, because air is all about rationality, ideas, chat, la la la. If it's missing in your chart, and I know someone who doesn't have any air in the chart, but they went a bit overboard going to university and getting degrees and things. So it's not about intelligence, but air is the part of the element that is more curious and is more into the rational side of things and the idea side of things and creating things in the mind rather than in the physical world. So I would hope that if I had a midwife, which I did, I would expect and want there to be earth and water going on in the chart, but I really wouldn't want them to be completely missing with air, because they might not be, which Ina May is, apart from a north node. I'd want a little bit of air in there. Not that we can be choosy about these things, okay? Okay, so that's Ina's chart. Spiritual midwifery. I'll put a link to the book so you can make your own mind up about whether or not it covers everything that is necessary. And it doesn't say in the book that if you want to give birth at home, this is the way to do it. Ina was never advocating that. Her thing when she came into the world, born 1940, and she's doing her thing in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s even, because that's when I read the book. She was advocating that women had choice, and that if the more they knew, the more they could understand, and they needed to be supported, there needed to be an emotional component in there, and every birth is different, so we can't have a one size fits all. Okay, so that's Ina. So now we're going on to Emily Saldaya, and she was born on the 24th of October 1986 in Florida City in Florida. I've used 6 a.m. for both of these charts because I don't know the time of birth. I'm using a whole sign again, and she is a sun sign Scorpio, just into Scorpio. Pluto in Scorpio, 7 degrees. Venus in Scorpio, 18 degrees. Mercury also, no, it's not, beg your pardon. Mercury in Scorpio, I think Venus is retrograde. So Sun, Scorpio, Pluto, Scorpio, Venus, retro in Scorpio, Mercury in Scorpio. She's got Saturn in Saggy and Uranus in Saggy, Neptune in Capricorn, Mars in Aquarius, Jupiter retrograde in Pisces, North Node, I haven't got time of birth, but yeah, North Node in Aries, and Moon in Cancer. Okay, now anyone with Moon in Cancer is gonna love the mothering thing, so that's just part of the course. She's also got Chiron retrograde in Gemini. Now there's a predominance of water in her chart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's one planet in there, which is Mars, which is in Aquarius. She's got one planet in Earth, which is Neptune, and she has 2 planets in fire, in mutable signs. However, her Saturn is in Sagittarius. So this is a parenting style which is more freedom orientated. Don't tell me what to do. Probably won't want to tell the child what to do either. Uranus is there as well. They're not conjunct. I think they're way out of orb. Saturn, yeah, they're not conjunct. So Saturn is 7 degrees and Uranus is 19 degrees. Saturn, when it went into Sagittarius, the parenting style would be very, very much freedom. Okay, so free, which is what this organisation is called, the Free Birth Society, I think. I don't think they call themselves Birthing, I'm sure it's free birthing. It's got a grand trine, all in water. But the sun is, and I say but, the sun is conjunct Pluto. Anybody with sun in Scorpio conjunct Pluto can put up with or want to expose themselves to something deeply transformative and not going to want painkillers type of thing. Especially with it being in Scorpio. So Scorpio persons, hello Scorpio, as a general rule don't like being told what to do anyway, but with themselves is that they carved their own life out, okay, because they can do the thing. They're ruled by Mars, they're ruled by Pluto. Scorpio is a sign about trust, and what you find with people with their personal planets conjunct Pluto, trust me, summit went on in their childhood. I don't know, I can't find anything out about this person's childhood. I did about the other lady in the organisation, which is Yolanda Norris Clark. Her father died, somebody else died, and then she I think she'd had a few babies, and then her father died. Oh, that's right. And her father was an alcoholic, and was still drinking when he died. And I'm sure she's had 11 children. Now, anybody that has 11 children, they've either got loads of money or they like giving birth. And if you're asking my opinion, which you haven't asked, but I'm going to give you my opinion, 11 children is OTT to me. There's no, inverted commas, rational reason to want to have that amount of children. Giving birth is one thing, bringing children up is something completely different. And what I'm concentrating on in this podcast is the sign that Saturn is in. What is your parental expectation, which you cannot force onto others? It's just a thing you do within yourself. However, I've got the year of birth for Yolandi, because we know how old she is. She's born in 1981, and I haven't got a birth date, but I've got a year of birth. So Jupiter's in Libra, and then later in the year moves into Scorpio. Saturn is in Libra. Okay, that's a very indecisive Saturn sign to be, fairness, etc. Uranus is in Scorpio, it goes retrograde and then goes direct in August, and at the end of the year is then in Sagittarius. I expect her birthday's later in the year, but I don't know. Neptune's in Sagittarius and Pluto's in Libra, and these two women are now running this organisation, making thousands of dollars. And that's a major difference to Ina May Gaskin. When she first started working with birthing women, she didn't charge anything. That money was not her motivator. And the disadvantage of these two ladies with the Free Birthing Society is one of them had never given birth, but shacked up and got into business with the other, and then gave birth, and then started telling everybody, this is how to do it, this is the best way to do it. You want to be, and is that the emphasis with it is that you're going to be free birthing. No one's going to tell you what to do. You can do it your way, which I say is fine if you're making a cake, but that's not what happens with a birth. You need to have a certain amount of responsibility. Well, a certain amount, you need an enormous responsibility towards the child, because you're going to be so busy in the birthing thing. Even if you have a drugs birth, you are going to be so busy with yourself that you being able to do something about or for the baby is pretty much limited. Don't care how wonderful your birth is, etc. The birthing process is a busy thing. And you do need people to be there with you, okay? So the differences between the two charts are considerable. And the Guardian article was focused on the deaths that had happened because of these unassisted births. Actually, in the UK, I think having an unassisted birth is bordering on illegal, just for the same reason that Constance Martin was eventually imprisoned, because you're putting the child's life at stake. So say you just decided to give birth at home and you kept all your family away and no one was there with you at all. I think you'd probably get done for mental health issues. Plus, in the UK, you have to register your baby within 36 hours, which, again, I don't think is the thing that happens in the US. But there have been women that have given birth like this, and some women have loved it. Great, super. They were the lucky ones. So I'm not being too judgmental about it. The Guardian article is very much aimed towards, say, the deaths that happen, but I think the deaths that happen with doing something risky needs to be taken into account. Just like extreme anything like this wild camping and stuff sounds fine on the face of it, but you could be camped out somewhere with no ability to contact anybody and you accidentally eat a mushroom, poof, you're dead. Or somebody else comes into the woods where you're camping and eats you for dinner. Can't happen in the UK because we haven't got any wild animals that could do that, but you know, there might be some sort of weird person that could attack you. So the concept of free and wild is only good for a certain amount of time. But we need to, when we're talking about parenting and what what sort of parenting are you going to do? Check your Saturn out. Then when you give birth, check your child's Saturn out. How do they want to be parented? How are they expecting their parents to be? And that causes an awful lot of conflict as the years go on, because a considerable amount of people that come and see me have had dreadful childhoods and haven't been parented nicely by lovely fluffy parents at all, and are traumatised by it. And the other thing I just want to say about giving birth is only a maximum of 3 days for the whole lifetime of a person, and to focus just upon the birth experience when you're considering the rest of the stuff, bringing them up, feeding them, taking them to school and all the rest of it, to in your influencer position that these people might be, just to focus on that one thing at the exclusion of the rest of the life of the child that you've given birth to. And you've now got 11 kids. So what sort of quality of life have your children got if you're busy running your influencing thing to your 11 children? Who's looking after them? Are they looking after themselves? Don't know about that. I do find people that have very, very large families. And I come from a family of 5, and that was pretty big. And what can happen in a very large family is that certain children, the parents can't do everything all of the time. Depends what the age gaps are between them, and also whether or not your siblings are helpful to each other. But it's a minefield, the whole subject. I don't want to trigger anybody that's listening. But the article's there. You can read it. You can. But I will, to make it fair, I'm putting the link to Spiritual Midwifery so you can read the book by Ina May Gaskin. So she's still alive. She's in her 80s. I think that's right. Let me just do the maths on that. 1 second. Yes, she's 85 now. So she's entering the twilight years, and she won't be with us for very long. But the book is I really, really can't fault the book. The book is marvellous. And then when you compare the photos in it and then the photos that you see on Instagram. So if you want to see lots of pictures, which I don't particularly want to do, but if you did, lots of pictures of women in an acute birth situation. So they're giving birth or have just given birth or whatever. This Free Birthing Society, whatever they're called, on their Instagram page, you can see all of these pictures of these women giving birth. Which, if you're into that, that's there. But they're much more extreme than they're pretty beautiful pictures in Spiritual Midwifery. And I was racking my brains to sort of find out, what was the difference between them. The difference is, Ina's not saying give birth on your own at all. She's saying do as much as you can to make the mother feel relaxed. That's her major thing. If the mother's relaxed, then the baby's more likely. Not always the case, but the baby's more likely to be able to appear. If you're totally stressed out of your brain, which can happen either way in a hospital situation or giving birth at home, something can happen. You're just like, oof, I can't cope with this anymore. I can't cope with the pain. I can't cope with how I feel. And the baby might be stressed as well while you're giving birth to it at home, on your own, which I certainly do not advocate. That's my opinion. I just want to stress that is my opinion. It might not be yours. And I'm sorry if I've triggered anything for you, but you're very welcome to email me, mary@maryenglish.co.uk, and I'll be back next week. Bye-bye now.